All right, I often get asked the question by my students, Miss Wolf, do you have kids? And I say, no, I'm not married. And they look at me kind of funny because they're like, it's not what I asked you. To me, those things go in order. But to many of my students, those are separate questions, you know? For me, I have chosen in my life to not be a mom unless I'm married. But it's been a battle. I have spent a lot of time in my life wanting desperately to be married and to be a mom, and that has not yet been the Lord's plan for me. And there have been many tearful nights when I have asked the Lord, like, I've begged the Lord. I remember someone once saying, well, have you prayed for him? I'm like, oh, sister, I have prayed, I have railed, I have begged the Lord to get married. I desperately want a husband. And I think about, like, I've spent a lot of time wondering why I'm not married. And the thought process usually went something like this: why aren't I married? There's a pretty skinny pretty girl over there and she's got a husband. That's it. It's because I'm too fat. That's why I'm not married. If I was skinny, I could get a husband. And I used to work for a cheerleading company and all the girls were like 100 pounds. And I would be like, oh, see, the guys all want to be with them, so that must be it. It's that I'm too fat. Or I think I'm too boring. I'm too serious. I'm not sporty enough. And so, like, I went through a season of my life where I watched SportsCenter every morning while I was eating my breakfast so that I could be up in the sports knowledge and I could talk to people about sports and be sporty. Or I'm like, I'm not fashionable enough. I don't wear enough jewelry. I don't wear enough makeup. I don't wear heels. That's what it is. If I just dress better, then I'd have a husband. And I'm pretty sure I even went, like, I was looking back now, I even chose my college major because I went into athletic training, and I'm pretty sure I went into athletic training because I wanted to be part of the sports crowd, and because I thought that was the way. That was the way that I'd find my athletic husband. And that has not been the Lord's plan for me, and that's okay. But usually my questions, as I would think about it, were usually, I am not enough. There's something about me that's deficient, and that's why I can't get married. And I would get really upset about it until someone once told me about the 5 whys. You ask yourself, when you have an issue you're wrestling with, to ask yourself the 5 whys. So my whys usually go like this. Why am I upset? Well, I'm upset because I'm single. Why does being single upset you? Well, if I got married, then my life could begin. Because I used to think, like, oh, if I could just get married, then my life will begin. I'm spinning my wheels. And so then I'd ask myself, so that's 2 whys, right? The third one is, why do you think that you have to be married for your life to begin? I'm like, well, because once I get married and have a husband and then have kids, then I'm living my life. Like right now, I just go to work and like do fun stuff. Like that doesn't matter, you know? And so then I'd ask myself, why do you think you have to be married? This is the 4th why. Why do you think you have to be married to make a difference? And I'd be like, well, because if I'm not married, no one's going to miss me. No one's going to care if I die, except like my parents, if I'm single. I will have not left any impression on the world. And then the 5th why is, why don't you think you matter? And that was really the heart of it. Why don't you think you matter? And I'd really think because I just really thought that in order to matter, I needed to leave a legacy. And I really thought the only way for me to leave a legacy is to have kids, to be married and have kids and have somebody miss me. I can't count how many times I laid in bed at night and thought, if someone broke into my house and murdered me, how long would it take for someone to notice? Would anybody even care or miss me? Besides my parents and a couple friends, would the world change at all if I stopped living in it? And that's a really sad thought, because I didn't think the answer was yes. I really thought the answer was no. That if I was gone, who would care? And that's really depressing. And so my prayers then would center on this, Lord, I don't feel like I matter. I don't feel like I count in this world. unless I'm somebody's everything, I feel like I am nothing. And so the verse that the Lord would take me to all the time, this is one of my all-time favorite verses, was this one, Psalm 139. God's like, Stephanie, I created you. I knit you together in your mother's womb. And then my response to that's supposed to be, I praise you, Lord, because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are beautiful. I know that full well. I am not a mistake. I am not made wrong. I am not lacking. I'm not enough. God tells me right here, you are beautifully and wonderfully made. My frame was not hidden when I was made in the secret place. I was woven together. We were all woven together by the master craftsman, the Lord God. Intentionally. He sat there and thought, how am I going to make Jared? I'm going to put the perfect mix of the perfect qualities in Jared. How am I going to put Randy together? I'm going to give him the... You know, every single one of us in this room was handcrafted by the master craftsman. My aunt, when I was a little kid, she had this picture in her bedroom, and I used to play in there, and it said, God don't make junk. And I always remember that. It was this little like tomboy girl, you know, it was probably from like, this picture is probably from like the 60s or something. And it's this little tomboy girl, and she's like, she looks kind of a hot mess, she's all dirty, and she's like, God don't make junk. And I always remember that, like, God don't make junk. He did not make junk when he made you. You were intentionally handcrafted by the master craftsman, the guy who just breathed and spoke the word light, and light happened. That guy put you together. That guy spent time like an artist in a canvas putting you together. And if the creator of the world put you together, you're not junk. And then I come to this one.
Keep going.
Oh, that's right, because last week we put the songs in. I'm like, for God, and then we all know this one, right? For God so loved the world, he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. Well, we live in the world. That means we are of the world, and because God loved the world, he sent his only son to die for us. He sent his only son to die for every single one of us. And I used to think, like, that's cool, God, but there's billions of people in the world. Jesus really, like, paid for the billions of us. You know, but then I personally think that Jesus would have still gone to the cross even if it was for one person. And the reason I think that is there's 3 stories in Luke 15. Here's the shorter of them. He says, or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Doesn't she light a lamp and sweep the house and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she calls her neighbors and friends together and says, rejoice, I found my coin. In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of angels of God over one sinner who repents. Now, she lit a lamp. That means it was nighttime. And she had to search and search. So when she found that coin, it was probably the middle of the night. That's what I take from that story. If your neighbor woke you up in the middle of the night to be like, I found a nickel, you'd be like, why are you waking me up over a nickel? Get off my property. But if your neighbor was up in the middle of the night and found a treasure chest in the bottom of their basement and said, I found a treasure chest, now you might be like, well, that's worth waking me up for. Every single one of us, every single person on this planet is worth waking up your neighbors for. We are so valuable to the Lord that when he finds even one of us who says, yes, God, I want to be a part of you, you are so valuable, you're worth waking up the neighbors for. Everyone here is worth that much to the Lord. Now, it's really easy. I think social media makes it really hard for us, or I guess really easy for us to get caught in that thinking. I used to think that way before Facebook. I don't even know how. Like, I feel really bad for this younger generation. who's always on social media. Because social media, to me, makes the I'm not enough conversation even worse than it used to be, like worse than it is naturally. Because you're watching, oh, she threw a birthday party for her kids, and she handmade that cake that looks like something off Cake Boss, and she had a pony. I got my kid a sheet cake from Kroger. Or, oh, I see that, whatever DIY project they just made themselves. That's amazing. I can't even put my clock back up on the wall without help. I have a Facebook friend. She has 3 kids. And if you were to follow her Facebook feed, you would think she has it all together. She is beautiful. She's my age. She looks like a model. She dresses like a model. She goes out with her friends all the time. She's got her short little skirt and cute little clutch purse. She looks like something out of Sex and the City. She and her kids drive their Jeep and go on these grand adventures, and there's pictures of them at the Grand Canyon and pictures of them here and in Yellowstone, and they're always going on some big adventure and they're having a great time. And you see all these pictures, and it's really easy to think that she's got it all together, that she has it made, that she knows the secret. And if I could just be like her, my life would be so great, because look how great her life is. But I know enough about her real life to know that it's not like that at all. She's twice divorced. She's been in a series of relationships with guys. Some of them have been very dangerous. She's had to get restraining orders against some of her boyfriends. She struggles financially, like on a fairly regular basis. She's always teetering on the brink of not being able to pay her bills. Her life is not perfect, but that's what it looks like on social media. And it's really easy for us to be like, I'm not enough, because we look at everybody else's highlight reel and wonder why our life isn't that highlight reel. But you got to remember, that's carefully edited. She doesn't put the picture of her overdue energy bill that she can't pay. She doesn't put the picture of the bruises that her last boyfriend gave her on there. She only puts the good stuff, and that's what we do. We show people the good stuff and we hide the bad. So it's really easy to think like I've got it all together. I remember years ago I was in a Bible study with this woman who, she had everything I'd always wanted. She married her husband was a good-looking guy. She had 3 or 4 kids, which is what I always wanted. She lived in a beautiful house on a cul-de-sac kind of street. She drove a nice car. She had a great job. She was beautiful. She dressed fancy. And I was like, that is what I've always wanted. She has the life that I always thought that I wanted to have. She was miserable. She and her husband were like getting counseling because things weren't great there. And I was like, okay, it's not that getting all those things makes your life perfect. I think about like Robin Williams. That guy had to have achieved the pinnacle of all that he ever dreamt having in his life, and he committed suicide. We all battle feeling not enough, and we all cope with it in different ways. Some of us try to fill our schedule so full so we feel important because everybody needs us. Some of us like to brag about the way things are doing. Some of us just work really, really hard. We work super long hours so that we feel like we matter. I used to watch SportsCenter so that I could maybe get married. I used to think if I could just get married, that was my answer. But the answer is our value and our identity comes from the Lord. How many of you on your paper wrote anything about being a child of God? Good job, guys. That is your first piece of your identity. Everyone in this room is a child of the Most High God. You are his beloved. I mean, he's got his wallet and he breaks it out and he's saying to the angels, look at Stephanie. Look how great she's raising her kids. I'm so proud of her. He's pulling it out. Look at Margot. She is fighting for her causes. She is protecting people. I'm especially fond of her. If you guys have seen The Shack, I'm especially fond of that one. He is pulling your picture out and showing it to the angels because he loves you so much. You are enough. Every single one of you in this room was given an awesome collection of skills, and they're exactly what the Lord wants for you to have. And what some of us do, and I'm totally guilty of this, we look at other people's things they're good at and think, I want to be good at that. Like even spiritual stuff. I'm like, God, I want to be one of those people that just lays my hand on someone and they're healed. I want to be able to speak in tongues or or perceive tongues or do miracles. And that's not what I have. That's not on my agenda for right now. And maybe it will be someday, I don't know. My job is to remember what God made me for right now. And we have purposes in this life, and sometimes our purposes are for a time being. I think about parents, like once those kids leave, a lot of parents have that empty nest syndrome because their identity was so wrapped up in being a parent that once the kids are gone, they're like, I don't know who I am anymore. It's the reason people men get their ears pierced when they turn 50 or buy a sports car. It's the reason why 30th birthday parties are sometimes 30th birthdays are like, for me, my 30th birthday, I was very stressed. Because I was like, I haven't reached what I wanted to reach yet. I'm not who I thought I would be at 30. God's like, you're who I want you to be. Settle down. So we've got to stop trying to be what somebody else is and be who God made us to be. And that might not be the way we get our income. You might not be making money out of the thing that God made you to do. And that's okay. He might be like, go ahead and do that job, but your real job is to be a great storyteller. I made you to be a great friend. I made you to be a person of hope. I made you to be a person who can fix things for people. I made you to be a great listener. Sometimes the things that we're really good at, we think are no big deal. But they're very important. It is very important that Roxanne sends cards to people. It helps them feel like they are still loved and thought of. And while that's a small thing, it's a huge thing for someone to think like they haven't forgotten about me. They care about me. So your homework for this week, one, is if you've not written child of God on your paper, to write that. 2, ask the Lord, who did you make me to be, and am I living that out? And sometimes that thought process takes time. For me, that process took a long time to figure out. I didn't hear it, it's like I didn't say it and God's like, Stephanie, I made you to be, blah, blah, blah. Like it was a process for me to get to the point where I know what I am. And sometimes I forget. I think like, oh yeah, God told me that. And then I forget about it and I'm not living that life. And God has to be like, hey, remember that thing I told you that I wanted you to be? Go over here and be that. Stop worrying about this over here. You're striving so hard to be this over here, but that's not what I made you to be. I made you to be this. And when you're doing the thing you're supposed to be doing, you're going to feel fine. You're not going to be striving. You're going to be just like energized because you're doing the thing you were made to do. Each of us has something we were made to do. And when you're doing it, you're going to feel really good about it. So that's your homework for this week is ask the Lord, who am I? What did you make me to be? And am I living out the purpose you made for me? And all of God's people said, Amen.